Alright, so I got enough questions I could fill out another whiteboard. This would be Q&A video number 3. The first question comes from a screen named Taylor-tiessen. It says, how do you train the mind-muscle connection? Can you give an example for the triceps? Now you can call it what you want to call it. I call it capacity recruit. The only reason I'm touching on that is because I just did an entire series of videos called Capacity Recruit, in which I talked about a lot of different things that you can include in your strategy to increase your mind-muscle connection. Now an example for the triceps, I would use isometrics. There's 2 ways to do this. Throw a bench press station together inside of a power rack, set the pins at roughly halfway, maybe just above that, put on more weight than you can lift, and push into the bar with as much force as possible. This should increase your capacity to recruit the triceps. If that doesn't work, use a little bit less weight, unhook the bar, lower about a quarter of the range of motion to where the triceps are supposed to be most responsible for producing force to perform the direction of effort, and just hold it there as long as you can until the muscles burn. The reason you're going to need a power rack is because in the first example, you can't lift the weight anyways, and in the second example, as you fatigue, the weight is going to come down onto you, you're not going to be able to push it off you. So you could use a spotter, but a power rack is most ideal for those methods. Jayzer asked, what's the difference between 1 40-second repetition and 6 to 8 reps dragged out over 40 seconds? The difference is in the load that you would use. It's not practical, number one, to drag a repetition out for 40 seconds, and if you were able to do so, how light would the weight be? It would have to be so fucking light that you're not imposing much of a demand at all. So I understand what you're saying. If the time under tension remains the same, is there a difference? But you got to take this into consideration. When you do a repetition, you produce more force than that is what is required to move the weight. Momentum lowers the mass to overcome, so the muscles have an opportunity to disengage throughout the range of motion as well as at the end ranges. So they're not working for 40 full seconds. You're able to use more weight because ATP can regenerate, and the more weight you use, the more times you use it, the greater force output, the greater amount of recruitment, and also fatigue depending on how many repetitions you do. You could use 1 40-second repetition to increase your capacity to recruit, so that would help Taylor as well. Or you could use it to fatigue the muscles at the end of the workout, but it's not something I personally would use exclusively, and I actually probably would never use it at all. Because even to flex your muscle for 40 seconds, from full extension to full flexion, I mean, that's not even really practical. So how much weight would I be using if I was doing that as an exercise? Like almost none. So the return on investment wouldn't be worth it to me. So that's the differences in the load and practicality. The next question was, could I do a biomechanical analysis of the squat? Now I've done a video on the biomechanical analysis of the squat, but I'll do a quick review for you. You need to understand the universal law of levers. You got levers, you got the direction of resistance. So we got the torso, the thigh, and the shin. The quads act on the shin, the hamstrings act on the torso, the thigh, and the shin to some degree, but not the shin as it relates to a squat. The glutes act on the thigh and the torso. So in the top position, the levers are parallel to the direction of resistance. They're inactive. As you start to descend, the knees travel forward, the hips travel backwards. That way the center of mass can stay above the base of support. If it doesn't, you're going to lose balance. It'll affect performance. The green represents the moment arms. The moment arm is longer on the right side of the direction of resistance than it is on the left. Therefore, the muscles on the right side are going to have to do more work. If you look at the levers, the shin is still almost parallel. The thigh is more perpendicular, and the torso is somewhere in between. So the muscles acting on those levers have to do the most amount of work. As you descend, the shin, depending on where your knees go, will be more in front of your toes. Therefore, the quads are going to have to do more work. But the thigh lever and the torso, but the thigh especially, is more perpendicular, if not completely perpendicular. Therefore, the muscles acting on it have to do the most amount of work. The squat, biomechanically, depending on how you do it, is more of a hip dominant movement than it is a knee dominant movement, even though people classify it as a knee dominant movement and a deadlift a hip dominant movement. They're both primarily hip dominant movements. Hopefully that answers your question. If you have any specific questions as it relates to the biomechanical analysis of the squat, feel free to ask. I'll try to answer in an upcoming video. But for now, you like the information, share it, click the fucking button at the bottom, subscribe to the channel. I'll keep bringing you the best information you're going to find as it relates to training to build muscle, get stronger, lose fat, look better, improve your level of physical preparedness, all that fucking shit.